the way that we put more weight into people wanting to be involved is the audience growing.
Okay.
When the audience is larger, they show up and they see some sort of tangible impact.
I guess I just have questions about like your process of creating a podcast, and basically my first question is, how do you choose who's going to be your guest and like what your topic of the week is going to be?
So it can go in any direction. The nice thing is it's not like we're the marketing show, or the general thematic is interesting career trajectories. Usually that means something entrepreneurial, although not exclusively. What I've learned is there is a stage of any startup or like new business or entrepreneur where most of what they're talking about is theater as opposed to actual like practitionership, right? Mm-hmm. So if I've sold $10 million worth of office furniture, mm-hmm. there's no theater there. I know how to sell office furniture, right? Mm-hmm. But there's other folks where it's like, well, imagine if one day there could be a solution like this that I am trying to build and also getting to try to you to buy. So basically, I am trying to find the highest level operators in any real given field mm-hmm. who are willing to be candid about how their field actually works.
How do you like get in contact with those people? Do you just like send an email and be like, hey, I'm interested in interviewing you?
Mostly cold email. So I specifically cited other biotech leaders that I've mm-hmm. interviewed, links directly to those episodes as evidence mm-hmm. about how long it takes. We were right around 40 minutes all in for him. You can see in the subject line, less than 1 hour of your time, like immediately clear mm-hmm. what I want, and that I'm respectful of his time before he even opens the email.
Right. Would you consider these people like part of the Piper network now, or are they just kind of random guests?
There's a spectrum to that. Some people really vibe with what we're doing, mm-hmm. and like I played basketball regularly with Nick, who's a past guest.
Okay.
So for certain people, yes, and they become friends, confidants, cheerleaders, allies, whatever you want to call them. And there's other people that like they probably wouldn't know my name from Peter mm-hmm. if you asked about being on the show.
Right.
The way that we put more weight into people wanting to be involved is the audience growing.
Okay.
When the audience is larger, they show up and they see some sort of tangible impact. Mm-hmm. Perfect example is Jim Gibbs. So Jim Gibbs, I'd kind of known around the Pittsburgh startup scene, was a guest on the podcast. We then, like a year or so later, featured him on this list that we made called the 5 CEOs in Pittsburgh to watch, or the 7 CEOs in Pittsburgh to watch. He came to me the next time I saw him in person and said, you generated more traffic for my website from that post than an appearance on like the local TV news. We did like a spot with them mm-hmm. or something. So from that point forward, the seriousness with which he took me and Piper and what we're doing meaningfully jumped upwards. Some people just dig it because they like Nick just dug it because of like the concept of it and the fact mm-hmm. that most people are doing it, and most people don't appreciate like how nimble we can be in producing something like this. For other people, they'll never really care unless you're like some sort of exponential impact for them. And then for this middle quadrant, once they see some sort of lift associated with it, they take you more seriously and not just like someone doing a podcast out of their basement like I used to be.
What are your goals / objectives when you interview a guest? Like, what do you want most to get out of it, I guess, for you or for Piper?
I think that the highest leverage long-term impact is me better understanding the business that they're in, or business generally. Mm-hmm. So something like music royalties, like the reason I'm coming onto that is literally that is a framework that I will probably still be using and finding value in 20 years from now.
Okay.
I could theoretically be pitching a biotechnology company to advertise in the rundown, to be involved, like to do some sort of business venture, and the fact that I understand the core machination of their business will be essential for me to actually close that deal. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, conveying that to the audience, mm-hmm. because similarly, 20 years from now, if we as an org continue to carry an ever larger, more engaged audience, mm-hmm. that's the other form of leverage where we can just turn to camera and say, buy a ticket to the Going Deep Summit, use our services, mm-hmm. apply for the job.
Right.
And that as a cost of acquisition, CAC, customer acquisition cost, being lower than the competition is a perpetual form of leverage for any business.
Who's your main audience for the podcast?
The aspirational class.
Okay.
So that is people that have real ambition. They might not say it super publicly because that's like, for some reason, a faux pas in certain social circles, but baked into them is a above average ambition. And married to that above average ambition is a recognition that outside of being a specialist, so I'm just the best Python developer, I'm just the best cookie baker. Most of the highest tiers of success require a polymath, multifaceted set of knowledge. And so like for me, I don't really know much about coding, but if I can understand the differences generally between JavaScript and Python, it may help me make better decisions at the margin, whether it be software we use for our company, so on and so forth. Those type of characters that understand having a broad swath of information and general curiosity is a boon to reaching your ambitions.
To an aspiring podcaster, would you say like, how long do you think it takes to really get to a point where, I guess, where you have enough experience to like make a really nice podcast that's not just like jumbled and, you know, awkward?
So there's different parts to that. There's reps in just being a host. Outside the context of any sort of domain-specific knowledge or content, there's just the art of hosting, putting the person at ease, body positioning, tonality, pacing, active listening. That's your social skills. Like that candidly comes down to like, how did your parents or guardians communicate to you as a child?
Right.
If they did a bad job of that, you're gonna have a much harder time. If they did a really good job of that, it's gonna come naturally to you. Then it's the constraints of the show itself. So if you are launching the Millennial Marketing Podcast and you're a millennial marketer, and that's where you've been working for the last 5 years, you're gonna very quickly have the domain expertise to ask good questions and make something relevant. I'm egotistically going for something much broader than that, and so it has taken a lot of fucking seasoning for me to be able to do it well. It has taken a lot of putting my foot in my mouth and having to read very widely in order to be moderately proficient at it.
Right.
So those are I would say like the two primary variables that would move, but there's not a concrete answer.